Night and day. AOC and Dr. Jill Stein, both of them attended their fair share of protests. And especially with the crisis that's happening in Gaza, this is right now a very important issue that will impact voters' decisions on election day in November. Now, Dr. Jill Stein and AOC both seem to have a different experience going to these protests. AOC, smiling, waving, looking all happy. And in comparison to Dr. Jill Stein, who put herself on the front lines, because as it stands right now, Dr. Jill Stein was arrested at an anti-Israel protest. I want to pull up this video here of Dr. Jill Stein, and also I'll be pulling up in comparison a video of AOC. So let's go and pull up this video that has recently gone viral, and many people are talking about it.
Hold the line now, hold the line. Hold the line. Hold the line now, hold the line. Hold the line now, hold the line. Hold it down for Palestine. Hold the line now, hold the line. Hold the line now, hold the line. Get back! Hey, you get back! You get back! That's just folks! That's just folks! That's just folks! You get back!
So what happened? Well, as it stands, U.S. President candidate arrested at anti-Israel protests. So Dr. Jill Stein of the Green Party has been arrested at a pro-Palestinian rally at Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri. Stein's arrest came amid a nationwide crackdown on anti-Israel demonstrations. Stein, her campaign manager, and her deputy campaign manager were among the 100 people detained at a protest camp on Washington University's campus on Saturday. Video footage shows a 73-year-old being led away from the camp by 3 officers, her hands apparently bound behind her back with zip ties. Gee, I wonder if AOC will ever face anything like that. Probably not. The encampment was set up to demand that the university divest from Boeing, which manufactures arms used by the Israeli military to strike Gaza. Stein's campaign manager, Jason Call, said in a statement. By the way, folks, I do want to address this, but, maybe it's important for the university to divest away from Boeing because their planes keep falling apart. Here's a video on the ground in which she was arrested. All right, so right there, that is Dr. Jill Stein. She is being arrested by the campus police. The Stein campaign supports the demands of the students and their peaceful protests and assembly on campus. Student protests for peace and civil liberties has always represented the best part of our collective moral conscience, solidarity. Washington University camp was one of around 4 dozen set up at college campuses across the U.S. and Canada in recent weeks, as well as demanding that their universities divest from Israeli linked companies. The protesters have called on the U.S. government to cease its financial military support for Israel over the war in Gaza. Sorry for that stutter. Police officers arrested hundreds of demonstrators in raids on 21 campuses on Wednesday, then hundreds more in a similar sweeps on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. While this crackdown has been encouraged by mainstream Democrats and Republicans alike, Democrats. I'm going to put this article down here for a second and just really ask these protesters this, okay? Because look, everyone has a right to protest. Everyone has a right to speak out, share their opinion. This goes for libertarians, Greens, socialists, conservatives, liberals, Democrats, Republicans, you name it, okay? But consistency is going to be key. And this is my direct challenge, especially to these protesters and those people who wrote in uncommitted during the Democratic primaries. Are you going to have follow through, or are you going to bend the knee to the Democratic establishment because of fear of Trump? Because the only way you're going to break the two-party system is by actually fighting the two-party system. And that means even eventually challenging people who are close to your heart, so close. People like AOC, for example. Because in comparison, look how nice and things are right here.
Nice to meet you.
Now, I do have to mute it because there's some music being played. But here is AOC. She's right there, Can't play the music because copyright, but, There she is. Everything's all smiles and great. It's, everyone's all warm and bubbly. It's nice. It's nice. And look, I understand what AOC means to a lot of progressives and independents. I get it. People were happy that she won. People were happy that she was able, to make her mark. However, my challenge is, are you ready to fight? Because Dr. Jill Stein was on the front line, but yet, where was AOC? I mean, is she going to ever put herself in the front line? Let's ask ourselves this. And in fact, do you see AOC ever doing what Dr. Jill Stein did? Type 1 for yes, Kit, but we got to be pragmatic here, okay? This is all about strategy and tactics, and shame on you for even promoting and endorsing third parties. Type 1 if that's your answer. Type 2, now AOC would never do that. She's right there, like any other progressive Democrat, to try and co-opt the movement, and more importantly, get voters to vote for Biden on election night in November. I wonder how many twos we'll get in the chat. I wonder indeed. We shall see. We shall definitely have to see. We shall see. But look, everything's all happy. Everything's all great. Smiles all around. If you're not disgusted, you should be. I want to pull up this video here of Dr. Jill Stein commenting on her being arrested.
Let's make Dr. Stein look great. Not gonna hurt. Whenever you like it, Sam.
Yeah, I'm just coming out of jail, so I don't know what my hair is doing.
This will be a very easy first question because I don't have to ask you to spell your first and last name or tell me what your title is because we know all that stuff. Looking good, Sam? Okay, take a breather. How long, well, I'm going to ask this as well. Let's start with this. Yeah. Dr. Stein, when you're coming out, how long were you in there for? What was it like when you were in the St. Louis County Jail?
It was kind of scary, to tell you the truth, because I got separated from the rest of the crowd, and it initially felt like there was a lot of safety in numbers, but then it turned out that I was being charged with assault after being assaulted by a bicycle and basically thrown onto my head backwards. I was charged with assaulting a police officer. Can you believe it? And so I got separated out, and I was alone going through this whole other process where I was going through a medical exam. I had, regular steel handcuffs put on and sat a long time sitting alone in a cell. And I had no idea, did anybody even know I was there? I had been separated from my team. And, was I going to be there all night? Was I going to be there for a week? What's going on? And when could I call my lawyer? So I was just completely led through this process, completely blind. And I'm really glad that, we got out. What time were we brought in?
Now I want to pause here. I want to take the video down here for a second because we're going to listen to a little bit more of this video. But consistency is key. Being real is key. I want to pull up this video way back from 2022. Remember when all those vote blue, no matter who people, those pink pussy hat people said they'd be protesting for days if something ever happened to Roe v. Wade? Well, that was always mediocre. I remember when they said that. But look, here's AOC being arrested. Hold on. Got to mute because copyright. But there she is. Hey, look. Hey. Maybe I'm going blind. And maybe you, the audience, can correct me on this. Okay? Because sometimes, look, I can get things wrong. And that's where you, my wonderful audience, can correct me. Do you see any handcuffs on her? I mean, wait a minute. Hold on. I'm not a doctor or professor, scientist, lawyer, or astronaut. But is that her hand in the air? Okay, she's walking away. Got this. Uh-huh. Why you got your hand? What? Her hand's in the air. Wait a minute. Hold on. Through the powers of editing. Wait a minute. AOC. Oh, this is all theatrics. Seriously, protesters, if you fall for this, if you guys get bullied, wait. What the heck? There's Ilhan Omar. Wait, Ilhan. Why are you walking like that? What? Wait a minute. What the? Oh, well. Hey, but by the way, folks, especially to these protesters who wrote in uncommitted, be consistent. Jill Stein actually got arrested. And by the way, since AOC endorsed Joe Biden, which is what all the Democrats are going to do, remember that the Democrats will form a shield wall around each other. Hell, they'll defend each other. And never once will AOC or Bernie Sanders hold their party accountable. So before we pull up more of the video from Jill Stein, consistency is key. Hey, look, here's Fetterman.
So
who is also a Democrat, who pretended to run on progressive values. Yeah, that's right. This guy who's in the U.S. Senate, who doesn't even know how to dress appropriate.
And President Biden was talking about these protests. He did a little both sidesing. He said the anti-Semitism of the protesters is bad, but everybody needs to understand about the humanitarian plight in Gaza too. What tone do you think he should be taking? What's the right answer when talking about these issues?
Well, I'm not going to give the president any advice or anyone, only on fashion. and
Jesus Christ. Our media is a joke here in this country. Our politicians are a joke. Everything. And if people fall for the song and dance of the Justice Democrats, brand new Congress, our revolution, they'll say things you want to hear, but they'll go to bat for Joe Biden, Fetterman, Schumer, Pelosi, because you are not their number one concern. They want to sucker you into assuming that they care about the issues. You think AOC really cares about the issues? After seeing that fake arrest of hers in 2022, I think a lot of people forgot that. Same thing for Ilhan Omar. Fake arrest, whereas Jill Stein actually got arrested.
But I will say this is that it's very clear that there is a very germ of anti-Semitism in all of these protests, and then sometimes it flares up. And again, including one of the leaders in Colombia said some just awful things and talking about, well, they're lucky that I'm not killing Zionists and things like that. And then he defended himself by saying, well, those were taken out of context. And I'm like, well, that's very similar to the way the college presidents, like same kind of language.
Ugh, God, man, I can't even listen to this guy. So anyways, that's Fetterman. He's a Democrat. And they're going to tell you to support him because he's a Democrat.
I would, boy, when did we get arrested? My guess is around 7:30, something like that, and finally got out at around 1:30 or 1:45, something like that.
So quite a long time. Obviously, you were not here to have all of this happen. You were here, as I'm assuming, to campaign, talk to people in St. Louis.
And to get on the ballot so that voters could have a choice, so that, the American public opposes the genocide, wants an immediate ceasefire and a diplomatic solution. So we want to get that on the ballot. We want a pro-worker campaign to be on the ballot. We want an anti-war campaign and a climate emergency campaign. We are the only campaign that actually represents all of those issues. So we have a lot to fight for to enable the American people to have a choice. And the American people are clamoring for a choice. They don't want these two zombie candidates rammed down their throat again. And by huge majorities, Americans want other choices. So we want to provide that choice. We have to jump through all kinds of hoops for Americans to be able to exercise, basic democracy in the voting booth. We have to collect, I don't know what it is, something like 10,000 signatures total in Missouri in order to get on the ballot. So if people want to be sure that you have an actual choice on the ballot, you can contact either our campaign, JillStein2024.com, or get in touch with the Missouri Green Party to help with that drive.
Dr. Stein, this is not the only protest going on. Some of them have gotten significantly worse, more arrests, suspensions. But then, of course, some of them have been peaceful at other universities where there isn't police involvement. Speak to what this is like here at St. Louis, where you have a situation like this, where there have been more than 80 arrests, yourself included. How does this fit into the larger picture nationwide?
It's pretty bad. I think it's a really bad look for the university that they are out there. Basically, they've called out the police and they are arresting this encampment that is nothing other than the exercise of our constitutional rights. This is about freedom of speech, and not just any old freedom of speech, but freedom of speech on a very critical issue that needs debate and dialogue. And there they are, sending in the riot police and basically creating a riot in an otherwise peaceful demonstration. So this is just shameful. We tried to dialogue with the administrators who were there and encourage them to think big picture here and to allow students to do what they were doing peacefully. And, you know, it might have helped delay action, but actually when we were invited, we were asked by the students to join their defense.
So I want to pause here because there's a couple of things I could look in regards to the Jill Stein campaign. As I've said on the show, I'm very disappointed in the third parties. I mean, I'm pretty impressed with how much attention they are getting, but I feel they have dropped the ball many times, especially after 2016 and the 2020 presidential election cycles, in which they really could have started building up their movement, made more infrastructure, made more inroads with progressives and independents, and dare I say, perhaps be a much more formidable force. What we're seeing here is an attempt by Dr. Jill Stein to at least get more attention. And I'm glad that she is standing in solidarity with the voters or these are the students who are protesting. But I look at this as, well, Stein, in order to get your message out there, I think for it to have much more of a stronger standing, you should have been doing this a year ago, 2 years ago, in regards to making some huge inroads with voters. And this was an opportunity that was lost by the Green Party. And especially when you have someone like first name Peter, last name D associated around you, and knowing how it's impacted not only the Greens, but also another presidential campaign, I do have to call into question overall the strategy and the tactics. It is great to see you stand in solidarity. It's another thing altogether. What are you going to do going forward? Because this is something that all independents and third parties are going to have to do. How much inroad are you going to have to make? But at the same time, for all these protesters out there, do not fall for the sucker, the trap of someone like AOC who fakes arrest. There she is being fake arrested in 2022 in protest for Roe v. Wade. Now, I think we've seen before, and there she is raising her hand up in the air. Cops aren't going to really be arresting someone on such a high profile like AOC, but do you see AOC on the front line? Do you see the Democrats on the front line? No, Democrats are talking down to these protesters. And this is where many of these activists and organizers are going to have to get ready to fight somebody like AOC, but also build something that is far more tangible and far more real, that actually has legs to stand on to actually fight against a two-party system. And one of that way is actually doing citizen ballot initiatives. By following through with citizen ballot initiatives, we can actually take on our system and, more importantly, bypass the politicians so that we could implement laws that will make our lives better. I do hold on to hope that maybe with this election cycle, we will see a pushback. But don't fall for the trap of somebody like AOC or Ilhan Omar or Bernie Sanders coming to your protest and think that they stand in solidarity. Same time, too, for third parties and independents. You know, I'm glad that Jill Stein was there. I'm glad that she was standing in solidarity. But I feel like her movement, the Greens, this goes for all third parties and independents, would have more strength if they actually planned this years in advance, if they actually really had a place, an alternative. Because how many of those voters are actually going to consider supporting third parties or independents? Because there's a good portion that might either, one, choose not to vote at all, or two, out of guilt and shame and bullying, will vote Democrat. No matter what, this presidential election cycle is going to intensify. And if all these student protests and crackdowns are a sign of what's in store, get ready for August, folks, because between August 19th through the 22nd, Chicago will be hosting the DNC convention. And to all these protesters and activists, especially those that will be coming to Chicago protesting the Democrats, are you going to have follow through? Because after 2024, after November, after election night, the whole world is going to still keep on moving along. What are people going to do to really make a challenge to the Democratic Party and the Republican Party? And that means fighting the people who you followed or you like retweeting. If you're not ready to fight, then you're not a serious person. And in Jill Stein's case, consistency is key. Hey, this isn't her first time getting arrested, but it is very interesting that we are seeing overall a pushback against the neoliberal media, what's happening in Gaza, and overall the mask is falling off from the Democratic establishment. If this doesn't wake you up, I don't know what will.